than what's behind the numbers. And especially in healthcare, a lot of these statistics are our loved ones. So, our mothers, fathers, spouses, children, grandparents. And listening to the keynotes today, Scott made a great point. And he said lessons tend to stick with the story behind it. So in a lot of the work that I do, I really try to focus on the story and the context with regards to data analytics and really trying to humanize the data so we can use it for positive action.
That's great, AJ. I'll go next. Nishant, I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to this session. So if I had a tagline, this applies personally and with the role that I play at JLL, it's "We are ready." So I work for a commercial real estate company, and I work in the industrial sector, and I support industrial from a technology perspective. So the amazing thing about JLL and what we've done in the commercial real estate industry is our leaders have been thinking about the technology disruption to the real estate industry several years ago. So it's been amazing to see all the effort and the strategy that's been put in place is actually, helping us right now during this time. And the same with an industrial sector. Industrial is booming right now as far as real estate and space. So it's been amazing to see the work that's been put in, previously is now coming to shine a positive light from a company standpoint. And then from a personal standpoint, going through COVID and all the challenges we've all had, I feel a bit like, man, I'm ready now. Like I can handle a bit more than I thought I could prior to COVID because of all the challenges we faced. So that would be my tagline: we are ready.
And I'll go last but not least. So the tagline I would want to have under my face on a billboard, if I got so lucky, would be improving the user experience of the world. So the company that I work for, Fuel Digital Media, we're a mobile agency, and we help companies achieve digital transformation regardless of industry. So when I was thinking about what phrase I wanted to use, the reason why I was drawn to this one specifically is if I think about all of the apps in my career so far that I have helped build and launch, regardless of industry, regardless of the specific features or functionality that was in there, the overarching goal was always to improve the way that people interact with technology in their everyday lives. Because if you think about it, the average statistic for the number of times we pick up our phone in a day is 58 times. And in each of those interactions, there's so many opportunities to make them more intuitive, smoother, better, and help you get what you need faster. And I think especially in my career as a product manager specifically, it's always juggling the business priorities and the business needs, but also understanding who's going to use our product, who's our end user, and how can we balance what's good for the business, but what's also good in providing value in people's lives. So improving the user experience of the world, my kind of role or my aspiration as a product manager, and I think also what Fueled's mission statement is as well.
I think you might be on mute.
Might be muted.
Yes, if Srinivas, if you are.
Great job. So first of all, thank you for, I was rattling away on mute, but first of all, thanks everybody. That was great. And if the audience want to post their own tagline, feel free to put it in chat. And but we are going to the next topic, which is trends. So I'm going to ask each of these wonderful leaders here on the top 3 industries, top 3 trends in their industry or their expertise, right? So last time I picked on AJ, so this time let me pick on Nashana first. So Nashana, you go first.
Okay, great. So again, I work for a commercial real estate company, so we we do the full service. So regardless of where you are in your real estate journey, we work with a lot of companies, and then we work with larger companies and smaller ones to manage their space, essentially. The three trends in our industry, one is the use of technology. And I mentioned this a little bit before in the tagline, but it's been amazing. There's this concept of prop tech, right? You know, the use of property and technology and combining that to solve problems of the world. So within the industrial space, you know, using technology to help our customers make better decisions, even when it comes to location, because you would think, oh man, you know, you have a warehouse and you say, okay, this is a prime location. But when you input technology and think about driving times with the truckers, which technology can be used to kind of help figure that out. And you think about the actual location and proximity to a local port to where the shipments are going to come in. And you think about calculating, using data calculations for the future of the space needs in the warehouse to determine how big your space is. All these factors have a technology behind it and can be used. And you might think from a customer standpoint that you are going to be in location A, but after you put in the technology and the predictive analytics and all these different factors, actually location B might be the right one. So more and more technologies or decisions are being fueled by the use of technology and analytics versus before it was more based off you know, how much are you going to pay per square feet? So those days are kind of gone. The next trend, as you probably know, is just the extremely high demand for space. We've seen this in the residential area, right? People from COVID are moving out of the city and into the suburbs, and it's causing a demand and increase in prices. So what happened with COVID is the same thing. You had e-commerce has really driven an increase for high demand in industrial space because everybody now is wanting to be able to ship things quickly. And so again, it's not an easy decision. There's a lot of data and technology that goes into where's the best location and how do I get from point A to B in the ideal spot. So we've got a 4.8 vacancy rate within our sector right now, and that's the lowest that it's ever been on record. So the demand for space is really high, and 60% of construction is pre-leased. So before we even hit the ground, that you know it's being sold. So we're seeing a very high demand in that from that standpoint. The last trend is urban logistics. So this is, you know, how do we, when you're out in the suburbs, it's kind of easier to get to that last mile because that warehouse is only like, you know, maybe 5 to 10 miles away, let's say, right? But it gets much more difficult when you're in Brooklyn, New York, and you're trying to get groceries delivered quickly because the warehouse is so far away. And it could take maybe 45 minutes to an hour just to get from that warehouse. So what companies are doing now is building multi-level warehouses within the city or right outside the city. So you actually can see trucks that, you know, usually warehouses are flat, but now you're seeing multi-level warehouses and trucks that are kind of going into that second and third tier just to be able to deliver to that urban area. So last mile logistics, getting to that customer faster, that is definitely a trend. And real estate has a big part to do because you have to build it to accommodate getting to your customers faster. So those are the three trends.
Awesome, great job. So let's go with Alicia next.
Sure. So I think to answer this question, we probably have to go back in time a little bit to probably 2007. So 2007 is when the iPhone was launched. And at the time we all know we were all there. We were excited by it. The touchscreen interface, revolutionary. Having the internet at your fingertips, also revolutionary. So when I think about smartphones and mobile, because that's the medium that we typically work for when it comes to digital, you know, the smartphone has surely improved across the board, but I would say more in like an incremental way as opposed to like kind of a revolutionary groundbreaking scale. You know, form factor has changed, camera specs, speed and performance has improved. Developers have even more apps, even better apps. But I think in the next generation of smartphones or in mobile technology, and I'm thinking specifically about consumer mobile because that's what I focus on, I think we'll see changes in 3 categories. So the first one is doubling down probably on digital and voice assistants. So we know about Siri, we know about Google Assistant, and they're decent right now, I think, at doing a lot of different things. But a lot of times, at least in my experience, I ask them to do something and they just kind of struggle with that. But some of the things that they can do, like the magnitude of how well they do it changes, is managing your tasks, reminding you to do something, planning your day. So help me find showtimes to a movie I want to go to, or call me an Uber, order this on Amazon. Entertainment, so you're running, your hands are occupied, play me some music from my playlist. You can get answers to questions, like pretty basic questions that are in like a certain template if you ask it in the right way. So like questions or like how to say a word in a different language. And then with like Internet of Things and smart home devices, you can control your home now with these assistants, like lock my door, turn the lights on and off. But I think like eventually these assistants, and both Apple and Google are investing a lot in it, even though they're not quite there yet, is every time you ask these assistants for something, you'll get the information that you want. That's kind of where we're headed. And we're headed in a position where technology is ever present in our lives, but it's not all consuming, because you don't have to pick up your phone every time you want something. You can just ask the assistant and use your voice to do that, so that you can be more mobile or agile with your day. So I'd say digital and voice assistants first. The second trend would be wearables. So think about kind of like what Google tried to do a couple of years ago with Google Glass, but again, it's a little bit too intrusive or obtrusive of a device. But what we'll get to, I think, with wearables that Google Glass is at least starting to do is how do we bridge like your version of reality with augmented reality, so that again, you don't have to keep picking up your phone. It's almost superimposed on your view of the world in a way that like you don't look down and run into something by accident. And directions and wayfinding is one. Wearables with your headphones. Google is doing this as well with like real-time translation. So the world, globalization, you can go everywhere. Someone says something to you in one language and then you hear it in another. And then also I think with wearables, the watch, and moving towards like your quantified self. So things like, the first Apple Watch, it used to just be kind of a glorified heart rate monitor, and then you'd get EKG, blood oxygen level. Again, it's doing these things, it's getting more and more accurate, but I think still not there yet. But the more devices that we can use, even with COVID, right, you have like haptic feedback to tell you if you are washing your hands 20 seconds. So making wearables help you keep track of your health and just yourself overall in a very personalized way. And then I think like the overall trend from what mobile and consumer mobile is like what I've read about, and also what I like the term that I like to use, which is ambient computing. So it's like technology with assistants, you have to ask for what you want and they'll eventually get good enough to tell you. But ambient computing, I think, is the phase that we'll get to, where technology kind of anticipates your needs and you don't even have to ask for it. It's already kind of giving you what you want. So a simple example of this could be like a smart fridge that orders food for you. Because it realizes it's out, or knows what your habits are, what you like to cook and what you like to eat, et cetera. So just to like kind of recap, I think digital voice assistants, and then naturally that'll move into wearables, and then eventually technology will start to become more and more invisible and more personalized for what you need to use it for.
So Ashana.
I think it's AJ because I.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
You should be the panelist. You should be the panelist. Maybe I want Ashana to speak more. AJ, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Srinivas. And let me just give a little bit of background on our organization. So the American Hospital Association, it's a national organization that supports hospitals, health systems, other healthcare networks, and healthcare professionals, as well as their patients and families. And so our membership is made up of nearly 5,000 hospitals across the country, as well as close to 45,000 individuals that are part of our professional membership groups. And in order to support our members, we provide various activities and resources ranging from policy and advocacy to developing education, training, certification, and other tools and resources. And so what we've heard from our members, and especially during the time of COVID, based on their focus areas, what challenges they're seeing, the AHA, in agreement with our board, have identified 3 strategic focus areas. And that's around health equity, behavioral health, and also workforce. And these challenges or issues have been around for some time, but I think the COVID pandemic has really increased a sense of urgency to focus on these 3 issues. And I've had the privilege to support projects that impact both behavioral health and workforce. So with regards to health equity, we're trying to address this in multiple ways. Is really focusing on leadership within the hospital and health system to ensure that the C-suite as well as the boards are diverse, and not just racially diverse, but also gender diversity, gender identity, religion, and we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard at that leadership level so that we can help instill some of the changes that are needed. And this is in addition to the ongoing work that we're doing to help ensure equitable care across all communities. With regards to behavioral health, there are 4 kind of goals that we're striving to address. 2 are related to access issues. So how can we increase access to care? And one way is through integration of both physical and behavioral health. So treating the patient more holistically instead of separating out, physical ailments like chronic diseases or accidents to mental health, because both impact each other. And so how can we move forward with treating the patient as a whole rather than separating, behavioral and physical health? And also, how can we engage community partners to enhance the continuum of care? So we can still provide the behavioral health services to patients and their families outside of the 4 walls of the hospital. We're also looking to reduce stigma and to normalize behavioral health and saying that it's okay not to be okay, or to seek behavioral health services, and also reducing the deaths of despair, which include deaths by suicide or death by overdoses or other substance use disorders. And then with regards to workforce, again, there's multiple avenues that we're looking to help address or support our members. And one is, how can we help strengthen the current workforce, by providing resources around burnout and resiliency. I think we've seen it across all industries, but even more so in the healthcare industry. There's also increase in violence in the workplace, but also just in general. So we have our own initiative called Hospitals Against Violence that's looking to address these issues. Also, how can we help, upskill, similar to what we're doing here for this conference, but how can we help upskill or retrain and provide additional skill sets to our healthcare workforce in order to retain them? And then finally, what are some of the tools, resources that we can help provide to help organizations be a little bit more strategic and be more proactive in addressing workforce issues?
Awesome. That was some great trends. So technology is already working in this room. I didn't move enough and it switched off the light on me. So I'm going to fix it as soon as we go to the next question. So this round is about challenges, right? So what is the biggest challenge facing your industry? And what is your strategy, right? So what is AJ's strategy? What is Alicia's strategy? What is Nashanda's strategy? It may not align with what your company strategy is right now, but what is your biggest challenge facing your industry and what is your strategy to navigate it? So this time, let's go with Alicia.
Sure. This was a tough question. I think I'm looking at it from the lens again of like consumer mobile technology, and something that's in the news a lot. It's something that both Apple and Google tout in their developer conferences is privacy. So, like if we expect a lot from technology, we expect a lot more, we get frustrated easily, but in order for technology to deliver personalized experiences, we have to surrender a lot of information to them. And that is risky and it poses a trade-off. It's like, it gives you kind of the ability to think, how much of a trade-off do I want to make between convenience and privacy? So that's something that I'm always considering in the back of my mind when I'm thinking about product definition and what we're going to build, how we're going to build it. I'll talk a little bit about how, because it kind of coincides with my strategy, which is what Apple, I think in particular, they've positioned themselves in the market for privacy. Google is also following suit, but a lot of guidelines in the app stores in order for an app to be launched has a lot of privacy and data rules in place. And it's something that we need to make sure is not a nice to have feature anymore. It's actually a requirement and nothing can ship without it. You have nutrition cards on each app that shows you what data is being collected and how it's being used. You have to make sure that you're very descriptive about what permission prompts anytime you try to collect data from users, even from using location, from camera permissions, Bluetooth access. Every time an app wants to do that, they need to explain to the user and make it very transparent why and how it's being used, and give the control back to the user's hands for how much information they do or do not want to share with the app and what value they could get if they do. You probably will have noticed if you've updated some apps recently, there's a prompt that gives you the ability to allow an app to track to make it more personally or don't allow. That's another mandate that Apple has done, and we have to make sure we build these prompts right away so that the experience changes. Maybe it's not as personalized as you want to, but again, the control and the privacy of your data lies in your own hands as opposed to companies or apps collecting information previously that you didn't even know that they were getting from you. And then there's also something called sign in with Apple and a mandatory guest mode. So you can't mandate that people create an account to use your service. You have to give them the option to explore the product first before you decide you want to give your credentials up or decide to create an account with something. And we also are working towards obfuscating user identity. So there's a strategy that I use is I do a lot of analytics and making sure that all of our decisions for product roadmap are based on analytics. But the analytics that we get should be separate from a user's personal identity. So kind of obfuscating personal identity, but still understanding how people generally use a product so that we can improve the experience for people. And one way that Apple and both Google is doing is you can sign in with Apple where it hides your email address, it hides your personal identity. But again, it allows the product to have information about how you're using an app or digital products so that they can make strategic decisions, but without feeling wary that they're capturing any personal information.
Let's go with AJ.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that one of our biggest challenges is actually one of our strategic focus areas, and that's workforce. And I don't think it's just with healthcare. I mean, I think we've heard about the Great Resignation. A lot of individuals are either burn out at their current positions or they're just trying to look for change and try to determine what they're passionate about, especially with the shift to the, teleworking and working from home. People's priorities have shifted and that's the same in the healthcare industry. But I think COVID has also impacted it more greatly with regards to burnout. And I mean, we've seen a lot of nurses, and my mom's a nurse manager at a hospital, and she's had nurses leave because they were just burnt out from treating COVID patients, the trauma that they've seen in dealing with some of the patients and families. But then there's the other side too, the business side, where a lot of these nurses are moving to agency because, they pay substantially more than hospitals can. And right now we're working to try and, incentivize nurses to continue working in the hospitals, but the workforce challenge is it's a big challenge right now for our health systems. And based on some of the previous work that I've done on some of the projects that I led, I plan on taking a lot of those lessons learned to apply it to this work. And like I mentioned, I've been privileged enough to work on, a lot of our workforce projects. And I think one of the main goals is to really understand the needs from our customers. And I say customers plurally because with regards to workforce, we have multiple customers. There's, the executives and leadership that are looking to recruit and retain healthcare workers, right? So what are their needs, their challenges, and their pain points, and how do we help address that? Looking at the leadership of the future, how do we, entice or encourage those to seek medical professional, and also provide the education needed to prepare them for the workforce. And then for the current workforce, what are the training and resources that they need to, to help sustain them and to keep them engaged and passionate about this work. Another lesson learned from previous work is to, not reinvent the wheel, to try and work on what's already worked in the past. And that could be from other industries. Sometimes other resources or other education or training or processes might be, very successful in other industries, and we might be able to adapt and, enhance that for healthcare industry. And so what are those, partnerships that we can build or learnings, that we can take from other industries and apply that within healthcare? And I think the last thing is to really focus on the low-hanging fruit. I mean, when you think about workforce challenges, like you want to boil the ocean, you want to solve all the problems, but thinking about agility, what is something that we can make an impact in the immediate and short term, and then just keep iterating, building on that to eventually accomplish our long-term goals. That makes it a little bit more manageable to really, solve this challenge and show accomplishments along the way.
All right.
Let's go with Nashana.
Thank you. So the biggest challenge, I'll answer this from an industry's perspective and then from an industrial perspective, which is where I work, industrial technology. So you think about real estate, right? The overall biggest challenge has been around the office, right? Because of COVID, everybody started working from home. So now, how do you reimagine the new office? Like, what does that look like? Do you need as much space? And if you do need space, how do you build it so that it's not a work environment, it's more of a community? And you think about Google and how, you go to their office and you see, couches, and they have napping stations and they've got free lunch and things like that. And at first we kind of thought, oh man, that's really outlandish. But now companies are coming to us at JLL and saying, hey, we need that model to get employees back to the office. So there's all types of camps. There's the hybrid model is the most popular, of course, but even within the hybrid model, the biggest challenge is how do you get that community feel back to the office so that when you do go, I know when I go to the office, if I have one meeting, I'm like, gosh, I just spent all this money for like gas and everything, like, was it really worth it? But if I go to the office and then I connect, with my team, we have a collaboration session, we have lunch, and then maybe there's something entertainment wise where we can have a fun group exercise. And then I have a powerful one-on-one at the end. Then I'm like, okay, that was worth my time. There was a quick, and I don't remember the person's name, but I was listening to a podcast that said back in the day with marriage, it used to be you married just for, your parents, would decide, or it used to be about money or financial or how, what could you do for me? And then it started to be, okay, now you have to get married and now you have to love me. Like that was like incorporated, right? It's like, really? Does it really have to be that way? And it doesn't. But then it was like, now you have to love me. Now you have to make money. Now you have to be my best friend. Now you have to be romantic. And it just can't, so now you get all these demands. And now it's like, okay, you wonder why divorce is so high now. It's just so many demands on an individual. Well, think about that in terms of your companies now. Employers are starting to say, you know what, if I go into an office from a real estate standpoint, I don't want to just have a desk. Like, you've got to make this very accommodating. You've got to, make sure that I'm comfortable, I have fun, I enjoy myself. It's accommodating. I have a quick access to get to everything. So there's a transformation going on with employees and what they want from a real estate standpoint and then out of companies. And so that's the biggest challenge, is how do you accommodate that? And I think the answer is, how I navigate it is, I think this is where listening skills come in, right? There's not going to be a one size fits all, but if you can reimagine the real estate office to be something that's accommodates multiple people's interests, because if I go there and there's a bunch of groups talking, I'm like, oh my God, I can't hear myself think. So maybe there's a quiet room, and then maybe there's a room for collaboration. So you have to cater to different audiences. So if anybody in the chat has any ideas around that, I'd love to hear like what you would want in the new or reimagined office space. The second challenge from an industrial standpoint is the supply chain disruption. So typically people don't think of real estate and supply chain, but it's all related, right? Because like I said before, where you put the real estate is typically determined. At JLL, we have hundreds of people that are supply chain experts, and they come in and they partner with the real estate broker to say, okay, based off your supply chain network and where you're going, this is where your real estate should be. Well, now we're running into challenges where, because of the supply chain disruption, we have construction, but the project can't start. Think about real estate, it's just a bunch of projects, right? Over and over again. But if the materials aren't there, you can't start the project gets delayed, and then you have multiple other issues, right? So the supply chain has really caused a lot of disruption in terms of getting materials, starting projects, and just getting the real estate moving, because the demand is high, we're ready to go, but then there's these other factors that are causing real estate to kind of pause in certain areas. So those are the big challenges. And how do I my strategy for the supply chain one is just to stay relevant. I just took a course a couple of weeks ago on supply chain, just so I'm knowledgeable about what's going on in that space and why the challenges are, so that when I put my technology hat on for industrial technology, I can think with that lens of having that whole picture, not just, focused on technology.
Great job, great job. So hopefully that gave our audience also a chance to kind of think about what your biggest challenge is and what is your strategy to navigate it. So we're going to move to the next round. So I didn't coin this phrase, never normal. Peter Hinson, whose books you might have read, coined this term called never normal, right? So there used to be a BC and an AD. Now it's before Corona and after Corona. BC is before Corona and AC is after Corona. Peter Hinson talked about when the world was all about horse carriages, and there was this major person in New York with scale producing horse carriages, and this thing called a car popped up. He didn't believe it. He actually was walking around talking about how car is a bad idea, right? But the world has never been the same since then. Same thing with the never normal. It used to be about the new normal. Now it's Peter Hinson calls it the never normal, right? So for example, the market capitalization of Zoom is more than a lot of airlines combined together, right? So people don't travel as often, but like from the convenience of your home, you can have a conference like this. Just kind of look at the market capitalization of Zoom. Now, in terms of dating apps, right? Who thought that people could just swipe on faces and pick their better half, right? So things have changed a lot, and it's never going to be normal, right? So that's the never normal. So where is the world? So I want this to be more of a discussion, right? So I kind of talked about Peter Hinson's ideas. Is the world going to have more generalists, people that know a little bit about a lot, or is it going to be like somebody, a cardiologist? Like cardiologist is a broad term, but yeah, somebody that is going to be focused on micro ideas, right? Is it going to be about disruptive technologies? Are more unicorns going to come? Is it going to be still the era of unicorns, the WhatsApps, the Ubers, and what else? Like, what else is on your mind? So where is the world going in this new, not new normal, never normal? So it's an open round. So I'm not gonna like pick on any of you. You can pick on each other.
I'll go first. I'm interested, Alicia. There was a person that made a comment around Meta and Facebook and what our thoughts are around that. So I thought that would be a good tie into the discussion. So I honestly haven't looked into it that much. But I know they're going towards this whole virtual reality. And, you know, there was a video, when I did look at their website, there's a video and you click on the video and it's like two people like literally like kissing virtually. And I'm like, whoa, like this is like, I don't know if I'm like, I have to like get myself prepared because this is the way that Facebook is imagining the future. And it's interesting because my first thought was like, oh my gosh, like that's, you know, that's the way to, that's out there. But you know who they said the same thing about? They said the same thing about, you know, Amazon, you know, with Jeff and how he built it as a bookstore initially online. And people were like, online bookstore, like who's going to do that? And now look what it's turned into, right? So, you know, that's the scary thing. You never know what technology is. Some things are going to like, you're going to go and it's going to be like, oh my gosh, like it's here. And then some things just, you know, don't disrupt as much as you think. So it's interesting. I know Facebook had to have some data behind making that decision, right? Because they're you know, they are a data company. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But Alicia, I'm interested to hear your thoughts around it.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot, and we were talking internally about where do we think Facebook is going with the metaverse. An interesting anecdote that I heard that I read on TechCrunch recently is that, you know, companies are taking the metaverse quite seriously. Facebook has the power to be able to enact change like this, even if there are naysayers or people who don't quite believe in it yet, because they've been forging the path. Same with like the internet too, right? There's a lot of hesitancy. So it looks like because we're a little uncomfortable with it, makes it seem like there might be a future. But Nike has been, you know, buying patents for things like for virtual shoes. You know, so they're imagining that this metaverse is going to have the same rules that apply in physical reality, but because people are all over the place, teams are distributed, we're more and more of a global society. Like we want to connect in ways that are only possible face to face, but metaverse might be creating technology to make that seem more and more like reality or realistic, and kind of like mimic those interactions. You know, I think something that I I definitely notice and get a lot of value from is like the water cooler and just casual acquaintances and chatting and whiteboarding and stuff like that. Those are all things that are essential to creating new ideas, to having like a coffee house, or having just like a brainstorming session and sketching things out on a napkin. How do we do that in a virtual way, which like you can't really quite do just on video call? So I think that's what they want to enable with the metaverse, but I am very curious to see how it's going to go. And I think they also just want to do a bit of a rebrand and kind of take themselves out of Facebook and Instagram and just being purely social media, and actually kind of going into technology that makes the workplace simulate what it used to be like in the BC.
And I know coming from the healthcare, it's it's hard to think about the metaverse and the tech space on this end, but we've made huge strides with regards to telehealth and virtual visits, and I am interested to see if this could be possible to maybe enhance those telehealth visits in the metaverse. And there's been a lot of challenges with having that personal touch, but then especially with the younger generation where you want things more at your fingertips, it's more convenient to have telehealth visits, especially if it's not life-threatening. And so how can we partner with these technology firms, and I mentioned that as one of my my lessons learned is trying to find these novel partnerships to really think through how can technology help enhance workflows within the hospital and health systems. Because I mean, the hospitals have always been behind with regards to technology, and part of it is a lot of the regulations, restrictions. There's a lot of privacy issues, a lot of security issues, and you've seen some of these companies like Google and Amazon try and address healthcare by creating their own, insurances or their own clinics, and have encountered some of these problems with like interoperability and some of the regulations. And so we're definitely moving into that direction slowly on the healthcare side, but at least there now are opportunities to explore how technology can impact a lot of the issues that are happening within the healthcare industry.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my perspective, I guess, on generalist versus specialist. I was thinking about that. So, both Apple and Google, they have twice a year developer conferences. They're introducing changes to software and hardware on a very regular basis. So you do have to be quite on top of things, and things are getting more and more granular and specialized. So I think we are moving to, and I'm curious what everyone else thinks, but from my perspective in mobile, we're moving to more specialists. Because of how rapidly technology is changing and how quickly and exponentially it changes. One thing that I have also noticed as well is beforehand, I think especially in the US market, we had a majority iPhone user base, but as the years progress and the decades progress, it's more and more even, and it might actually surpass, like Android kind of might surpass iOS like it has in the rest of the world. So a decision that we make, especially for our projects, is what are we going to build, but also how are we going to build it? What platforms are we going to use? And it used to be, start with iOS because it's majority and follow up with Android if you think you have product market fit. But we're using this technology that Google started, Flutter. We've been building a lot of Flutter apps. In our opinion, it's better than React Native because it more closely mimics native interactions on both platforms, but allows you to have one singular code base. But one consideration we do have to always bring up with our clients and with companies that we're advising is Dart developers, which is the language that you use to build Flutter apps, are quite rare and hard to find. So if you want to make sure, you have to make sure that you find these kind of special skills to be able to maintain your code base and build upon it over time. So people who specialize in languages and these specialty skills are very important and can go a long way. So I'd say in mobile, specialization is where we're headed.
I'll give my take on it. I want to read a comment because Rajesh, I hope I'm saying your name right, put a comment in. I'm just going to read it off because it was really interesting. So he said, this is very interesting. I was talking to someone who was just in school and heard a perspective. We're moving away from specialists to generalists. The reason being seek and search is important, more important than having wisdom and knowledge in holding that for many years on one thing. Though agree in some areas we need specialists, but specialists being expertise may be short-lived due to the lightning speed of change. And I was like, wow, that was a really interesting perspective. And I think, me personally, I think there's going to be a combination of both. I do agree with that comment around seek and search is more important, because, you could go to school, get all this training and learning, and then the minute you hit the ground, there's going to be something else that you're going to need to learn how to search and figure out that new thing, whatever it is. So I think that is definitely an important skill. But I think there'll be a time, even like in my role now, right? I am, my general background, right, is technology. I'm specializing right now in the industrial space. And within that space, there's all these specialties that I'm supposed to be aware of and know so that I can be the best advisor for technology. So I'm a generalist in the sense of industrial and technology, but I specialize in core issues around that. I think we'll have a world where we'll have people that'll be like, it's almost like, yeah, what's your general field, and then what's your specialty? What's your general field, and then there'll be a couple of different specialties versus just I'm this one thing and I dive into that for the rest of my life. So that's my 2 cents.
That's great. That's more than 2 cents. So
Yeah.
So that was good. So I have one question for each of you, and then we're going to turn this into a Q&A. I just want to make sure people get some ideas on asking questions. So because Nashanda was talking last, I'm going to pick on her again. So Nashanda, I mean, Chicago is a city of skyscrapers. We invented it. And it was about going vertical and Apple building and then going big in terms of office space. With the corona, things changed, right? So you had this big, huge buildings, some of them are kind of a one-of-a-kind building, but nobody in it, right? So, but then on the flip side, companies are actually able to hire cheaper labor because they can now go broad, because they can especially in engineering and technology. So, and then there was this social unrest where it kind of, everybody was flocking back to the suburbs. People thought suburbs were dead and it was the era of the cities, right? So with all this churn, where do you think the big projects are going to come in building, right? So your JLL is a global firm. So where do you think the big projects are going to come?
Yeah, I think that there is going to be, I think there's going to be mixed. Like right now, for sure, I can tell you, like in industrial, it's just booming right now. But the type of industrial, I think, is going to be really interesting. So, for instance, the grocery sector, you think grocery stores, there's a lot of new companies that are investing in property locations so that they can deliver groceries faster. And what people are building now, and you have to get through the government, the regulations and all that, because usually you have a permit and you say, this is an industrial space. I have to build industrial on this space. This is residential. I have to build residential. But this is just speculation, but what I feel like the trend is going to be is there are these hybrid places. So it's not a cookie cutter office. Like maybe it's an office and then you have, a bunch of retail stores in there. From a grocery standpoint, what they're doing is they're building like, future state, you're going to see a grocery store, and then right beside it, you're going to see the industrial warehouse where all those supplies are. And there's going to be robots in there, picking up the groceries and moving things into the actual store side, like right in one building. So, and that's back to that in urban logistics space. Within industrial, again, you think industrial, like, okay, old warehouse building, right? But because of the labor demands, people are now saying, okay, in industrial, I want a nice office space. I want to go in and get food quickly. I don't want to have to drive everywhere. So you're going to see this, transformation of spaces all over the world. And a lot of it depends on, the company, the atmosphere, and what they want to do. But even there's companies that right now that are building almost like ecosystems, communities, and they're companies, but you go there and you can actually go there and you could stay the night if you want to. And it's a really nice place. You can wake up and, the restaurant's right there, and then the office building is right there. So there's lots of creative ideas that are going on. It'll be interesting to see what actually takes and holds for the future.
Awesome. Moving on to, that was a great answer. So AJ, so you are in American Hospital Association, like you can get to the core of the issues, right? One of the core issues is doctors are the last to adopt technology, right? So, and that's what we want to believe. And I think it's true. So in your worldview, like what projects or what apps do doctors need to get tech savvy, and maybe it'll solve the health insurance issues and make it cheaper? What is your worldview on it?
Yeah, and I think that anything that can help support the administrative work that they're doing, right, can make it easy for them to adopt. Because at the end of the day, doctors want to treat their patients. They want to provide the care and spend that time with their patients to really understand, what the underlying issues is and provide that care. But oftentimes they have to write the notes, they have to provide the administrative work. But I think any technologies that can help with making that work efficiency, even from like intake, right, where sometimes doctors have to go back to like medical records or ask, how are you feeling? Why are you coming in today? But if there could be, potential like chatbots or other, other AI related technologies that can capture all that information, summarize it for the physician so that they can get into the heart of, what they need to provide for the patient. But then also apps or, data that can create a comprehensive profile of the patient, right? Right now, there's been a lot of challenges with interoperability or utilizing the data, but how can we holistically see, a patient's profile based on all the previous visits so that we can see, how are they progressing? What can we do to help enhance that care?
Awesome. Great answer, AJ. That was good. Bots for doctors. That's awesome. That's a great area. So moving on to Alicia. So Alicia, I think the biggest cliche in this world is digital transformation because it's already there. Digital is here. It's real, right? So cloud is real. Everybody thinks cloud. You have an API for everything. You can look at the market cap. I mean, you can look at the size of Twilio and everything, right? So where are the new? So I mean, AI. Everybody does some kind of AI. I mean, your everything that you do, your phone kind of makes everything AI enabled, right? So where are the next big digital products? Digital transformation again is a cliche. So where are these big digital projects going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do agree with you to some degree that it is a cliche, but there are clients that we work with where we kind of look at the stack that they're using and we look at the way that they build products and their roadmap. And there's a lot of room for improvement there. I think the thing with digital transformation is just taking, especially for companies that have been around for a while and how fast technology is moving, how do we move as fast as new technologies and take advantage of them because we're built on legacy code bases or because we have a whole stack that because we were maybe earlier to the game or we've been around for many, many years. So that's something that we really try to get in and get our hands dirty and help them figure out, what is the latest and greatest of all of these tools that people are building every single day, it seems like, and integrate that so that platforms can become faster, they can become more intuitive. I think another differentiator in our projects and what's fueled strength and bread and butter is design. So again, like always, user-centric design is something that is an easy word to say, but actually doing in practice is very difficult. And the burden, if something is difficult for a user to complete an action or find out where a feature is, or maybe they didn't know how to do something, it's actually not their fault. It's the way that it was designed and the way that if enough research has been done about it, if enough testing has been done about it, it should be intuitive. And that's not the onus of the consumer, it's the onus of who built the product. So I think when it comes to that, design is even more important. It becomes more of a differentiator sometimes than the technology itself, because the technology is there in a lot of ways and exists. And then also taking you from a large enterprise client, but being as agile as a startup and utilizing new technology, new APIs, new services, synchronizing databases and things like that. How can we use the latest stack and keep the company moving in the right direction?
Awesome. Great answer, right? There's a lot of technical debt to pay off. So good answer, good comeback when I said Digital transformation is a cliche. There is a lot of technical debt that needs to be handled, right? So great job, all of you. We're going to turn this into a Q&A now from the audience. I'm sure there are tons of questions. We can take some of them right now, and then we can always, if you post your questions in the chat, we can get those answered later. But I want to, so you have the rights to unmute yourself and just ask your question. Keep it PG-13 and keep the question a question, not a statement. So this is for the audience to start asking questions. Let me know if you cannot unmute by putting that in chat. I see everybody can unmute themselves.
You know, somebody at the beginning brought up the transition when cars came up and how that impacted the horse and buggy world. And so in general, when new things come up that are gonna unplant or unseat existing things, then what are people's thoughts on how we can better transition to the new things without it destroying people's, you know, lives, basically?
Without uprooting them? That's a wonderful question. I'm going to toss it to our wonderful panelists. Who wants to take that one?
I'll just say, you know, real quick you're right. You know, the disruption is something that is coming and we don't know where it's coming from. I think it's more about not preparing for the disruption. It's more about being ready to adapt when it does come, because we don't know. Like, for example, with electric vehicles, I'm starting to think now, how can I tell my brokers to design the buildings to make sure it accommodates an electric truck, because I know it's potentially coming. But for autonomous cars, that's a little bit further out because of the regulations. The technology is fine. It's not the technology, it's the regulations that are preventing that from kind of moving forward at a fast pace. So I'm less concerned about that. But it's more like telling and like being open and you know, researching and kind of being open to adapting when it does come. I think that for me, that's critical, is just having a company that you can be fluid in. As project managers, you're gonna have to have that same thing, because you're gonna have to pivot sometimes based off the disruptions that you don't even know are going to come, unfortunately.
Awesome, great question, great answer.
I'll just add to that too, and I think Scott mentioned this in his keynote. It's how do we change the perspective, right, of individuals, and especially with any new changes or disruptions. You know, explaining how the benefits outweigh the risks, especially in something new, can help alleviate some of those concerns. But then once those changes have been like implemented and there's been some data or use cases, I think it's always that feedback loop, right, of presenting, okay, these are the benefits and this is how it's been improving now that we've made these changes, to help kind of adopt and add more comfort to those that might be like hesitant to the change, or, you know, still might be risk averse.
Awesome, next question. I have tons of questions for these panelists, but I want the audience to kind of get some of their questions answered. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, there is one from the chat about what have you done during COVID that you never thought you would do or see. So I never thought the whole world would be like remote. I've been actually remote for 6 years. I go in the office when I need to, but I never thought that I would value going to the office and human interaction. So, you know, I've been remote for years, but during COVID, just being so remote and being on video so much, I'm actually craving going to the office and being around humans. So I never thought I would like crave being around people as much as I do now. So.
Shanda, I think you brought this up about kind of the challenges that you've seen with the supply chain within your industry. And I didn't think that I would see such a global issue with regards to the supply chain based on COVID. And one of my projects last year was actually to help, you know, really work with hospitals and health systems and other partners to address the PPE crisis. Because I think we all knew that there was a shortage with, you know, face masks, surgical masks, and other healthcare equipment. And it was just, you know, unbelievable to see the reliance globally with not just the, you know, the different equipment, but also the raw materials. I think that was one of the issues too, is a lot of the raw materials are overseas. So even though we're trying to how can we produce a lot of these materials here in the US to avoid, the shipping and the transportation, but a lot of the raw materials can't be grown here, especially for like gloves and other PPE. So I just seeing the challenges with the supply chain.
Awesome. So we just have 1 more minute, so I want to have a proper closing.
I have one.
Did somebody have a quick question?
Yes, Srinivas, I wanted to ask a question that I thought was
Go ahead.
subject matter that I thought was perhaps absent from this conversation. So
Sure.
so in the corporate world with which I'm affiliated, the subject du jour for the last 3 months has been return to the office. But I think that particular discussion pushes off an even bigger discussion that I've been thinking about over the last decade, and that is corporate governance. And do the governance models that exist today actually hinder innovation, creative destruction, and new ways of working? And I think that that existing or legacy governance models have, in my observation, been a hindrance to especially large organization evolution and
Agreed.
creative thinking. And
No,
so I
that's
want
a
to
profound point. So I'll have to stop you. I mean,
go ahead.
we got the answer. I mean, that's
Sure,
an
go ahead.
amazing, profound, and it'll be a subject of a brand new session in a future
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
session. But I just want to make sure that, that you gave a lot of food for thought. I want to give a proper thank you to our wonderful panelists. Again, please take a picture and post it on LinkedIn, because again, pictures with these people are going to be worth a lot down the line. I want to thank Nashana, AJ, and Alicia for their participation and triggering a lot of great ideas in our audience. There are a lot to think about, a lot to act on. We know where the big projects are going to come from in the future. So thank you. We do have a certificate, but I want to, in lieu of time, we're going to send it. They are suitable for framing and posting on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you want, you'll get them. But I want to keep the conversation going with all of you, and then we'll definitely engage you with PMI Chicagoland. So thank you, AJ, Alicia, and Ashana for being such an awesome panelist group.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank you
us.
so much.
Thanks. So now everyone can go to your favorite networking session for now, and then we're going to start with the track sessions in 15 minutes. So until then, you can kind of enjoy the networking part of it. So thanks, everybody.